turn it up. Yeah. Clock eyes, Uncle Dave.
It's a dynasty. It's a dynasty. It's a dynasty. It's a dynasty. Hey, let's talk what moves to do, who to trade for who. Get your fantasy stats and the place to boot. Get the plans for the draft and the major clues. With the home Sean, Jeudy and Andrew, Dan Dudes got the hot takes. Every stop place, not base, plot cases. Man, hit the streams of fate, talking teams and plays. But let's get to the show, man. See you later.
All right, welcome back to Dynasty Football Digest. My name is Sean. You can find me on Twitter at Lanny1925. I am here with my co-host Andrew.
You can find me at VidiCentFF.
And we're here with one of our new writers, Dan.
Hey, everybody. You can find me at the Denny Fresh on Twitter.
All right. And Dan, real quick before we get going here, you want to just kind of tell us a little bit about what you've been doing at the website, what you're planning on working on, all that stuff?
Sure. So just came aboard recently. Been helping out doing some of the editing and going to be working on the Dynasty side. And right now working up some things I'm hoping to get out real soon, looking at trade evaluation and some tools we can use to compare incoming rookie classes to current vets and how to maximize value in trades.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll expect to see that on the website soon, but we are back to talk more wide receiver landing spots after we've made it through 3 in the last month. So let's just kick it off where we left off and talk Jalen Reagor from Philly. You guys have any thoughts on Reagor?
I mean, you couldn't ask for, a more wide open landing spot. They didn't have an NFL caliber wide receiver on the roster. So, he steps in day one as maybe not the number one receiving option because I think it's still Ertz, but certainly the number one wide receiver. So, there's just a bounty of targets available for him to just immediately step in and acquire. Obviously he's got a very dynamic, explosive skill set. So I think that pairs well with Wentz's skill set as well. So I think it's going to be an excellent match, and he's going to be probably one of the safer bets to finish the top 36 wide receivers as a rookie.
Okay. Dan, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I know Reagor's been a pretty one of the more divisive wide receivers in class. I am pro Reagor, but I do sort of acknowledge that he's got a pretty wide range of outcomes, I think. The targets are there, but I think it's hard to know exactly what Philly's going to employ, right? One of the things I think they're one of the hardest teams when analyzing what to do with their fantasy studs. For a team that's had as much success as they've had, you can make the argument they've also had a lot of bad luck. And I'm not really sure we know what that offense really looks like when it's working. And there are mouths to feed. I know a lot of people, I am not as high on Sanders as some, but a lot of people have him as the breakout back this year. But all that said, I agree. Reagor's got a dynamic set of skills. He's explosive. I know he didn't test that well, but you can see it on the tape. He gets up to game speed real quick, and he's an intense competitor. And I trust that brain trust in Philly. So if he falls to me, I'm happy to grab him. I'm just not reaching for him.
So kind of where do you feel comfortable taking him? Like, are we talking, do you consider him over Lamb or Jeudy?
Do I? No. Definitely not.
Okay. Where does he kind of slot in? Is he in that next tier?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little roster construction because he's certainly not the safest play. But I think if you're looking at guys with upside, he's in that next group certainly for me.
Okay. All right. So somewhere around, like the 108, 109, 110, somewhere in there.
Yeah. If I can get him at 110, I'm happy to grab him.
All right. Interesting. So for me, I really, really like Reagor as a player. I didn't like him as much as you and Joey, Andrew. But my primary concern is just volume. Because there aren't a whole lot of players of that style that get consistent big volume. So like the targets are definitely open there and there isn't a whole lot of competition, but I can't think of a lot of great examples of players of that style that are super high volume. Can either of you guys have anything there?
No, I mean, I actually agree. I think that is why I think the range of outcomes is wide. I think you're not building an offense around him. He's giving you contributions in a lot of different ways.
Right. So I guess how does that compare as far as fantasy value goes? Because like, does he max out as a wide receiver too?
Well, max out over the course of his career. I think he can touch bottom and ride receiver 1, but I think he's more likely a wide receiver 2.
Okay.
And, you play out his career many times. I think that's where he is most likely living.
So who do you have as a comp for him, Sean?
Honestly, I think it's not Deshaun Jackson because he can do a lot of stuff underneath. I don't know. I don't have a great comp for him.
Well, see, because I was just trying to rack my brain for it because you were like, can you give an example of somebody like him that has just been successful? And so I was trying to think of how he succeeds. And so like, I view him as he's got deep threat skill set, but he's also got, like you said, like the short stuff, like the yak yards after reception, right? And so like the best player that sort of immediately came to mind, and I'm not saying he's this player because I don't think he's nearly as refined as this player, but Amari Cooper is a guy that can be effective downfield and can be very effective on like short intermediate stuff and getting yards after reception. So again, he's not Amari Cooper, but I don't see why he couldn't develop into that sort of player.
So the difference with Amari Cooper, I think, is that I think that the Eagles are going to be tempted to use him in that deep threat fly route role. That's not to say that's where he has to be used, but I think that that's tempting for a lot of teams to have that speed and not just send him deep and take the top off the defense. Because while that's not super useful for fantasy, it is super useful in the NFL, even if you're not getting targets, because like forcing teams to roll their coverage over is a big deal. Mm-hmm. So I think that you're less likely. I think you could get Amari Cooper, and I think especially like the drop issues probably also compares to Amari Cooper. But I think that there's not, like, Amari Cooper never really had that risk to just be a fly route receiver, and I think that could be something they do with Reagor.
Sure. I also think when you're grabbing Cooper, you're also, I mean, what he does absolutely best is one of the things. It's not like Reagor's a bad route runner, but he's not an exceptional one. And I mean, that's really a place where Cooper thrives. Can I throw out a comp for you?
Sure.
What if Randall Cobb could stay on the field?
Again, Randall Cobb is kind of that prototypical slot. He played running back in college. He was built a little more like that. Reagor's a little more undersized, and I don't think you ever thought that Cobb was going to be that fly route wide receiver. I think honestly, like Marquise Goodwin last year would have been a good comp for him.
See, because Goodwin, I mean,
sorry, not Goodwin. Marquise Brown last year.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, Reagor's
not that undersized though.
Yeah, Reagor's kind of rocked up. Reagor's rocked up though.
He's got 10 pounds on him, but I think him being rocked up when he came in and weighed in was part of why he didn't test well. So I think he put on a little extra weight that affected him because like size definitely was a concern for him coming into the combine and all that stuff. But yeah, I definitely like the upside, and I think he's going to be a great best ball player. I do worry that he's going to be misused.
Did you say he had 10 pounds on him? Because I got Reagor at 206, and if I recall correctly, Marquise Brown did he break 170?
He's like
I thought he was 180, and I thought that Reagor was playing at 195 last year.
Okay. I'm gonna look this up.
I could be off on those, but
you might be right. I test he looks bigger than that though.
Yeah, no, he does. He definitely does. So, all right, let's see how much time we got here. Let's take a short little break, and then we'll come back to Justin Jefferson.
Are you ready to take your fantasy draft to the next level? Order your rookie draft guide today, covering 122 rookie prospects in both IDP and offense. A collaboration between your favorite analysts. Pre-order at idpguys.org and dynastyfootballdigest.com.
All right, so real quick, we want to we looked up the weights. So Marquise Brown came in at what, 170?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got good amount of weight on him. I think that type of style though, where you can throw him those short passes and let him run, and you can also send him deep. I think that's a decent comp in terms of usage still.
Yeah, I see the Cobb comp on the underneath stuff, but not on the deep stuff. And I think Brown maybe, he's again a player that they're tempted to use only deep because of the elite game breaking speed, but he does have the underneath stuff. So yeah, that's reasonable.
Sure. Okay, so Justin Jefferson, Minnesota. This was one of the weirder landing spots for me. I'll let you guys go first, but I was not super excited about this.
So, yeah, sure. So I think there could have been more exciting landing spots, but I still do like the fit. I think it's a pretty high floor fit long term. And, if there's any sort of forward progression with the Thielen injury, it becomes a much higher ceiling. But I do think Jefferson's one of the safer pieces. They have the need. I think the only thing actually that, and I think Jefferson's ceiling is a lot lower than a lot of the other guys that are more exciting, but I think he does have a higher floor. I think he's real versatile. I think he can do a lot of different things. I understand there's some redundancy in his game and Thielen's game. And I also think that the Vikings are going to, I'm a big Irv Smith guy, and I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight ends. But I think there's a lot of he's as close to a can't fail for me. So if you like floor guys, Jefferson's a floor guy for me.
So, yeah, actually, Andrew, say your piece so I can just disagree with you when you're done.
Well, actually, I know exactly what you're going to say because we talked about this guy at length before. I think someone was off air though, so
yeah.
Honestly, I like him. Again, the redundancy is the biggest issue for me because while I do recognize that Thielen can play outside, he's most effective in the slot. They are probably going to run a lot of 2 tight end stuff, and they're not splitting their tight ends out wide. They're going to be running out of the slot as well, or in line. So I don't really know what to expect for Jefferson in terms of snaps as a role for year one. Now, obviously, Thielen's probably he's on the downward of his career, so there could be drafting for the future as opposed to this year, and they want him to develop underneath Thielen. And I think that it's if you're going to learn to play that role in the NFL from a guy, I think that's a good guy to learn from, right? So a lot of future benefits for him, but I don't. He actually slipped in my in sort of my rookie rankings based on his landing spot as opposed to rising. Because while they do need a wide receiver to replace Stephon Diggs, he's not the guy that's going to replace Stephon Diggs. So that's my thought.
So, kind of going along with what you said, I might have talked about this on the IDP Guys podcast, but basically when I was going and doing my evaluation of Joe Burrow, right? So one of the primary concerns with Joe Burrow is that he had such a small sample size of successful football, where he was a completely different player this year than he was last year, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people worried that it was because they changed the scheme, and maybe he's a schemed quarterback, and because that LSU offense was designed so well that he couldn't fail there. So what I went to do was, before I started evaluating, go back and watch his tape from last, or I guess 2 years ago now, however you want to look at it, from 2018. And look at what he didn't do well. Look at what it was that was keeping him from being somebody that people were looking forward to as an NFL prospect. And the idea was that then you take a look and you see, like, did he improve on those things, or was he not asked to do those things? And that's how you kind of differentiate between improvement as a player versus skill. So one of the major things that I came across there was Justin Jefferson was terrible on the outside, and he really, really struggled to track the ball down the field. Like when you throw those fade routes and those 9 routes and corner routes and all that stuff, he just wasn't good at tracking the ball over his shoulder and down the field at all, really. So for me, that made a lot of sense why he came in this year, and he looked like a very legitimate, awesome prospect, because he was playing strictly in the slot and he wasn't asked to do any of that stuff. So going to the Vikings, where that slot spot is kind of taken right now, you got to wonder whether they're going to move Thielen to the outside or play Jefferson on the outside. And what I worry about is that they think Jefferson can be an outside receiver. And that's, in my mind, definitely not where he's a fit. And so, yeah, maybe a couple of years down the road, he struggles outside and they bump him back inside. But, like, for me, immediately, I definitely worry about how they're going to use him and whether they're just kind of, like, planning on misusing him, I guess. I don't know. So, yeah. Dan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. Okay. I do think my interest in him is more long-term than short-term. So I think that's part of it. I am sort of projecting him as their slot guy of the future. So sure. that is part of it. I don't think I'm quite as down as you are, but it sounds like you've done more tape with him. So I'm going to double back and look at some stuff. But I also, I don't know. I tend to let how much I trust teams' track record with their guys and their player development and usage affect sort of tie-breaking for me. Sure. And I do trust that, the offensive brain group there, the way they use their players and the Vikings offense delivers.
So then does it worry you at all that they have a new offensive coordinator and that Stefanski's gone?
It's always going to, question marks are always going to worry me, but there is institutional stability.
Okay. All right. No, that's totally fair. Anybody have any more thoughts on Justin Jefferson here? All right, let's knock out Brandon Aiyuk, Broncos. This one, I really liked this landing spot.
Come again?
Brandon Aiyuk, Denver. I really liked this landing spot.
You mean Brandon Aiyuk, San Francisco?
Yeah.
Sorry, San Francisco. My bad. Really liked this landing spot. Jesus.
He liked the other landing spot.
Yeah. No, sorry, I'm thinking of Hamler. So Brandon Aiyuk is, in my mind, very similar to Deebo Samuel, and they've shown that they can use a guy like Deebo Samuel, and they've shown that they can get versatile with it. I think that it is a little redundant having both of them, but I also think that where Garoppolo excels is in throwing to guys like Deebo and like Aiyuk. I think that's the type of thing that you want from them. You want those bigger built guys that are a little bigger targets but can attack the stuff underneath. And when I say bigger targets, I mean in terms of like frame size, not like the height aspect of it. And guys that can catch and run and just give them easy targets and make yards after the catch. Because I think that's really what Garoppolo needs to succeed. And I think that Deebo's success as a rookie really kind of just illustrates that works for them. So I think that they're going to have a decent number of open targets. I think that they're still going to be run first, which is unfortunate for his upside there. But I think you also have to believe that if you can get him in there and you can start getting him a target share rather than just pure volume, if Garoppolo can make it work with those type of guys, they might open it up and throw a little bit more. So how do you feel about Aiyuk to San Francisco?
So I love it for a few reasons, but it also it also makes me nervous for a couple other reasons because
Okay.
whenever you see a guy, correct me if I'm wrong, they traded up to get him as well, right? They traded back
Yeah.
into the first.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's a guy they're going after. It's a guy that Shanahan obviously wanted, right? If they're gonna invest for the draft capital in order to get him, and I think Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in the league. So whenever you see him going after a guy that's going to fit his system, the way that he envisions his system working, it makes you feel pretty good about it, pretty strong about it. What worries me a little bit is that 2 years ago Dante Pettis looked like an emerging star, and then last year Dante Pettis
Can we
disappeared.
not?
No,
Can we not?
the Dante Pettis disappeared. So last year Debo looked like an emerging star, and I'm just it makes me anxious that Brandon Aiyuk is gonna come in and erase Debo. But like if that's the cycle,
Debo is nice. Anyway,
man,
sorry. Go ahead.
So
I'm
was
saying Debo is nice.
Pettis. I still like both of them. So that's what makes me nervous. Is this just going to be like Shanahan's dad was famous for his running backs, right? The whole running back carousel. Is this going to be Kyle's thing? Is wide receiver carousel, where you never know who to trust in a given year? I don't know.
God, I just wanna punch you through the fucking phone right now.
Shanahan, he has been very effective with running backs as well, and he's sort of shown some of the same proclivities in that sense. But I don't know. Like, it makes me nervous about trusting 49ers wide receivers. Kittle is the number one, although they might not be able to afford him. The latest reports that I saw that he wants wide receiver money, and
they should pay him it, but that's another topic.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't blame him.
Well, it didn't work out for Jimmy Graham though a couple years ago, right? With the franchise tag, and he had a reasonable argument as well.
Yeah, Kittle.
He had a reasonable argument to pay him. That doesn't mean that they should.
Sure. So anyway, I like Aiyuk. I think he's going to be, probably a notable fantasy player this year. But do I trust him long term? He's not a guy that I'm investing heavily in terms of my rookie drafts. So
yeah, I'm more on the concern side actually. I have a similar take. I feel like Sean just shared on Jefferson, which is I'm a little worried about the redundancy. I'm a little. Yes, he's similar to Debo, but I think Debo's a much better player. I think Debo's still being overlooked. I think when we're looking at breakout wide receivers, he's top of my list.
You're definitely preaching to the world's biggest Debo fan. He was my 103 last year.
Yeah, I think Debo's a baller, and I do think that coach and scheme are strong landing spots for him. But this just smacks to me so much of like great football landing spot, not great fantasy landing spot. I do think they'll maximize it. I do think he'll help keep that offense moving. I do think it plays into Garoppolo's strengths, or rather away from his weaknesses, depending on how you view Jimmy G. But Debo, Kittle's running, I just don't see a ceiling at all.
See, and I do, because I really think that those catch and runs. The thing is that those catch and runs, you can make volume out of that. Like when you give people easy completions, you can sit there and use your passing game like a running game. And I think that that's how they want to use the passing game. They want to have a running game, and they want to use their passing game as a running game, because they know they don't have a passing game. So I think that you can definitely, like, you may not see 2,000-yard wide receivers, two 1,000-yard wide receivers,
yeah.
right? But you might see two receivers with a lot of receptions, because you might be sitting there with Jarvis Landry type numbers where you're dumping the ball off 6 yards and they're getting 3 yards after the catch. That might be what you get, but
yeah, he's also a scoring system guy, right? Like if you're full point PPR, he's worth a lot more to me than if you're standard score.
Right. And I guess I don't even consider people who play standard scoring people. So So we're going to take a short break with that, and we'll be back to talk at least one more wide receiver here.
Dynasty Football Digest, your new essential site for Dynasty information. For as little as $1 a month, gain access to all that we have to offer. Rankings, trends, ADP, in-season assets, and a Slack chat just for subscribers. Purchase today at dynastyfootballdigest.com.
Welcome back, and we're going to start with T. Higgins to the Bengals. Dan, let's let you kick it off here, because I know Andrew and I are both not huge T. Higgins fans, although I do like the landing spot, but let's hear your take real quick first.
Yeah, I like the landing spot more than I like the player. Okay. I think he is, dropping into an offense that is we're all wrong if it's not an offense on Ascension, right? I'm as loud and proud of an AJ Green fan as there is, but we know that those days aren't long. And he could be in a prime position to really inherit a pretty large role fairly quickly. So I am not super enthusiastic in his pro camp, if that makes sense. Like, I think the spot's good, and if he falls the right way, cool. But I'm not grabbing. I'm not reaching for him.
Yeah, and so for me, the landing spot was enough for me to be like, okay, yeah, if he falls to the right place, I'll draft him. Right.
Right.
The problem is he's not falling to the right place, because there were enough truthers out there before the draft that there's at least one in your league, and the landing spot plus the fact that there's one truther out there, I'm not getting them anywhere, and I'm just probably not going to get them anywhere. So I like the landing spot, and I think that first of all, it gets to stay in orange, that's cool. But I think that having this type of wide receiver is not as beneficial to a young quarterback as having somebody that can separate. And I think Higgins' biggest issue is separation. And that's not always the best thing for a rookie quarterback. That's a better thing for somebody like Phillip Rivers, somebody like Matt Stafford. Just somebody who has a little more confidence and is willing to chuck it up, whereas rookies tend to dial that back. So I think year one, this is probably not going to be super productive for him, especially given that you still have Tyler Boyd, who's going to be a target hog there. You have AJ Green coming back. John Ross, who knows what you're going to get there. If he stays healthy, who knows?
If he stays John Ross, if he stays healthy.
Yeah, who knows? So I am not super optimistic for year one, but I think that they are planning on letting John Ross walk at some point. I think that they're planning on moving on from AJ Green at some point. And I think that this is the future for them. And I like that a couple of years down the road, once Joe Burrow's got a little more confidence in his arm. The one thing I will say is that receivers like this typically want a quarterback with a stronger arm to kind of zip it into tighter windows and stuff. And that's not Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow's accurate enough. I don't really worry about it all that much.
And you would say that self-confidence is not something that Burrow lacks.
No, it's not. How often do you see rookie quarterbacks come in with an immense amount of self-confidence?
Mm-hmm. I think he is. I just think he's very high. I agree with the point. I'm just saying he feels that might be his best thing, is that his level of swag and self-confidence.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at Baker Mayfield, arguably the most confident quarterback, and even his rookie year, and even when he was playing well, he was still very conservative with where he was throwing the football. And I think that's part of what made him have such a successful rookie season, was that he was conservative. And I think that there's so many reasons why it didn't work last year, but I think one of them is that after that successful rookie season, he started attacking a little more, and the offense was not built to really attack all that well, or do really anything all that well. So, yeah, I worry year one, but that's just me. So, let's see, we got time for at least another one here.
No opinion, Andrew.
No,
I mean, we know. Go ahead.
I appreciate you teeing him up for me, but I'm going to pass to comment on T. Higgins.
Right on.
Okay.
I got it.
We'll let you kick off Michael Pittman then here.
Oh, man. So the only thing I wanted to say about Higgins was that I don't have him in any single league that I mean, I have 7 different leagues. I have like an average of three second-round picks in each league, and I didn't get him anywhere because I hate him that much. Pittman's a guy that I actually wanted to get, but he just kept getting picked, directly ahead of me. I wasn't high enough on him to take him in the first, but at the beginning of the second, I think that's a really nice spot to look at Pittman. He's a guy that I think, again, he's landing in a good spot. Contrary to the Reagor situation where he's stepping into as the alpha year one, I think it's actually beneficial to Pittman that he's still got a number one receiver in place in Indianapolis, right? A guy to take some attention away, a guy to to learn from as well, right? So I think there's a lot of value there. I don't think that the Paris Campbell project is completely done, but I don't think that they saw a lot they liked from him last year. So I think the number 2 job is certainly wide open there. And, you alluded to like Philip Rivers being willing to take some shots for guys. I think that could benefit Pittman for sure.
Right. This is that. Yeah. Paris Campbell, I can't get on board with at all.
I'm pro Pittman. I like the landing spot from a long-term standpoint. I'm curious to hear where you guys think Rivers is on his arc, because I think he's toast.
I think he's toast as well.
That's my concern. I mean, I wouldn't – if you need something out of Pittman this year, then I'm worried. But I like the spot. I like the opportunity. I like the chance to learn. I like the brain trust in Indy. And I think – in very short order, a lot of opportunity is going to open up for him in a big way.
Sure. And I guess for me, I'm not worried as much about Rivers because, yes, I think his arm is toast, but he's still able to make productive receivers because he throws it. He just throws it. He throws it up. And he doesn't need that super strong arm because he works with those jump ball receivers. He works with guys that are not nearly as athletic or good at separating. So, yeah, I actually really like the Michael Pittman landing spot. I don't think T.Y. Hilton really takes away from him either. I think that this is like very much a complementary piece. Paris Campbell, I don't know what they were thinking drafting him in the first place, so I'm not even gonna go there. But yeah, if we want to get one more in here, we can talk Laviska Shenault before we call it.
Laviska who?
We're not doing this. Shenault. So Laviska Shenault to the Jaguars. Who wants to start here?
Go for it, Dan.
So, I mean, I can't think of a worse spot. So let's just start with that. I just don't know. There's nothing to feel particularly optimistic with or even confident in from a stability standpoint in Jacksonville. I think, and then the player himself, who I mean, there's injury history that we blow out of proportion, and then there's this dude's injury history. And I think he'll have those days where you're like, oh my God, look at this beast. And then we'll be like, I'll see him in a month. So
for me, I don't hate the landing spot as much as you because I think Gardner Minshew is very much a check down quarterback. Like he's definitely not a sling it down the field, wicked arm type of guy. And I think that somebody like Shenault, that's basically a running back that plays the wide receiver position, I think that works there. Very similar to the pairing of Aiyuk and Garoppolo. So imagine Debo's not there, how you would feel about Aiyuk and Garoppolo. Or just imagine Debo. Imagine Shenault as Debo, except with extensive injuries. And the injuries is definitely what concerns me there. The landing spot isn't really, especially because I don't think they're on board with Fournette.
Mm-hmm. No, they
So,
definitely aren't.
Right. So I think if you plug in Chris Thompson, Reichwell, Armstead, Robinson, all those guys, then you're looking at a different offense.
But see, I don't think they're on board with him, but I don't think that's because they're not going to – like, I think they just run him into the ground, and who cares because he's gone.
They want to trade him, though.
It hasn't come to fruition yet.
No, it hasn't, but that tells me that long-term he is not part of the plans.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think he's not.
But when was the last time anybody got anything of value in a trade for a running back? They're going to get more value out of running him into the ground there and trade value.
That's what I'm saying. I think they're gonna. I think they'll run him.
Right. I'm not saying he is gonna get traded. I'm saying that the fact they wanted to trade him tells me that they are not committed to him long term or even in the near future. So he might get another year with them. That's entirely possible. But I think that we're really looking at a situation where they're going to have to switch up their offense from the give Fournette the ball 20 times a game type of offense. And once that happens, I think those receivers that can catch and run is going to help Gardner Minshew a lot. Now, if they come out and they draft a new quarterback next year, then it might be a little different. But also, I think that Shenault can do a lot more than he gets credit for. And I think that he also was very much used in weird ways in college. And so he's going to get an opportunity to be a more complete wide receiver in the NFL while also having that catch and run trump card. The only concern here for me is the injury concerns.
I'm a fan of his game. Don't get me wrong. I
Sure.
actually think if we're just raw talent, he's at the top of this pack. I mean, not the best, but I mean, he would be a top tier guy if he didn't have the injury history.
Yep. No, absolutely. For me, he's, I think I had him at talent-wise wide receiver 4.
Yep. That's exactly where I have him.
You can't ignore the injuries. And I'm very much opposed to injury-prone labels, but when you have a certain level of repeat injuries on similar things, then it's just like, I can't deny this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, you want to talk?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I might be like, neither of you seem super high on him, but I feel like I might be maybe a little bit lower than you guys. I don't think that the Jaguars, they've got Gruden as the OC there now, right? Is that correct?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Jay Gruden? That's what I remember anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, and so I think he just runs a bit too much of a traditional offense to really get creative with a player like Shenault.
Stop doing that.
I don't love his short-term prospects. I think that Chark and Minshew definitely had a connection last year, so I don't think he's going to step in and be the alpha. Which again, it could be to his benefit, but they've got like quietly a relatively talented couple of wide receivers there. D.D. Westbrook is a very talented wide receiver as well. I don't think he's ever produced to his potential, but so I realistically he could be best case scenario the number 3, and as you've already alluded to, it's a run first offense. So
you saying best case scenario?
No, sorry, I'm
a wide receiver 3, not their wide receiver 3.
Well, sorry, I guess I did say best case scenario. That was not. I guess I misspoke.
Worst case scenario he can be.
Worst case scenario. But my sort of perception is that he very well could be their wide receiver 3 behind Westbrook and Chark. And so, yeah, I would say best case scenario, yes, he's a wide receiver 3 for fantasy purposes. But I think that is optimistic. So I don't love his short-term prospects. And as you've alluded to already with the injury receives, who knows what the long-term holds. So, no, he's not a guy that I've heavily invested in either.
I will say this, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you a majority of the stuff we're assessing with rookies outside of this is their skill set, this is their landing spot, etc., falls into your risk tolerance. If you're a big swinger, big risk taker, ceiling matters more than floor, he's much more intriguing in that basket.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I think that again comes down to roster construction, where if you feel like you have 3 wide receivers you can start on a weekly basis and feel good about it, you take the home run swing with Laviska. So where have you guys been seeing him in drafts?
Lead second. And those are not EP drafts. Those aren't offense only drafts.
So even regular drafts, I've been seeing him go mid-second. And that's a no-brainer to me there.
Super flex or 1 QB?
1 QB.
Mm-hmm.
He's fallen behind guys like KJ Hamler. I've seen him go behind Van Jefferson a couple of times.
Oh, yeah, I'm taking him before those guys.
Yeah, I mean, like, once you get to the 203, I'm trading up to get him. And I feel good about that.
Okay.
I think he's kind of in that same range as Pittman. So realistically, I've been seeing like Pittman go around 201. I've been seeing Shenault go anywhere from 203 to 206. But once I start getting up to that early second, like 203, it starts to get a little bit shakier on guys that I feel really good about. And to me, the drop off in terms of how much I like their upside long term between a guy like KJ Hamler and Laviska Shenault is pretty big. So I'm willing to trade up and make that. And I'm doing it with the expectation that it's entirely possible that he's just a complete dud because of the injuries and he never amounts to anything. But I'd rather have that than a guy that ends up as a consistent wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. Because when you sit there with a young wide receiver who's sitting there at wide receiver 4, you're like, okay, well, I can't drop him. I can't really trade him, but I also can't use him. And then he just sits on your roster. Whereas Laviska Shenault tears another ACL in the next 2 years, like, you're pretty safe to trade him away or let him go. So I don't know. I feel pretty good about trading up for him just as a like home run swing there. Now that we've gotten through like some of these wide receivers and we have just a couple of minutes left here, do you guys have anybody specifically that you've been targeting just like for their price in these first couple of rounds at wide receiver?
Fantasy wide, like fantasy wise, the guys we talked about or haven't talked about yet.
It doesn't matter.
Because the guys we talked about, it's too early in the draft for me to specifically target them for value. Like I said, I didn't get as much Pittman as I wanted because I just didn't have the early second picks to grab them, and I'm not somebody that typically tries to trade up. So
no, you are not. You don't even try and make your pick. You'll sit there for 8 hours on the clock trying to trade down.
That's right. So nobody will ever trade away their early seconds this year. So, but Bryan Edwards is a guy that I've seen consistently falling to the end of the second, and he's a guy that I love with that value of end of the second for sure.
Would you rather have Bryan Edwards or Viska?
I think I'd rather have Edwards just because I think he's slipping a little bit further. But
I'm saying at the same price.
Yeah, if I was on the clock picking, I'd probably have to pick Laviska.
Okay. Dan, anybody you're targeting specifically?
I'm a little underdrafted at this point for me normally, okay. but we didn't touch on him at all. But the guy that I've just been circling like a shark and being aggressive to get everywhere I can is Mims.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, and Mims will be next show probably.
Yep.
assuming we get through anybody next week. But yeah, so this has been Dynasty Football Digest. You can find our written content on dynastyfootballdigest.com or on idpguys.org. You can subscribe there, and basically you'll land access to the Slack channel. You'll get rankings, ADP, trade calculator, all sorts of awesome stuff. There's also a package right now going on where you can get a subscription in package with the rookie draft magazines, and we have a full rookie draft magazine out for offense and a full one for IDP as well. So those came out looking absolutely awesome. Our producer Nate put a ton of work into making those look really nice. So yeah, we got that. I got that in the mail yesterday, I believe. But I mean, they look like a magazine. You just go out and buy at Target. It just looks absolutely fantastic. And guys put hundreds and hundreds of hours of work into it. I can tell you just alone, I probably watched like 300 to 400 hours of film this year, and I'm an absolute psychopath. And yeah, we're all just giving away our thoughts. So yeah, check that out. Drop by the websites, and yeah, our YouTube channel also, Writer Digest Network, REITER. You can, if you're listening to this as a podcast and not on YouTube, you can actually see us, which is probably terrifying, but but you can if you really want to. So yeah.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Have a good one, man.
The IDP Guys is your #1 resource for IDP information for your fantasy leagues. For as little as $1 a month, get access to all that we have to offer: rankings, ADP, trade calculator, in-season assets, and a Slack chat to get personal help all year round. Purchase today at idpguys.org.
Thanks for listening. Dynasty Football Digest. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Nasty Nate, got you, homie. Good production right here. We the Digest Network.